Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach. I am joined by my co host and producer, Holly Deschenes. Today, we're going to be getting into the permission to be. So, this is about stillness, slowing down, but ultimately, that slowing down helps us speed up. So, what are your thoughts on just being still with yourself, Holly?
That's an interesting question to unpack. I think there's like different levels of it. In some
Mhm.
ways, that's terrifying. In other ways, I can certainly understand the benefit. In most cases, though, aside from terrifying, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I,
Well,
I think that's probably common for a lot of people.
yeah, it's kind of day one. We're all trained to under this idea of being productive and constantly doing things, and even more recently with the screen addictions and all that kind of stuff. There's always something that's got our attention, and so there's either the always pushing forward or there's the always occupied in some way, shape, or form, and that doesn't necessarily give us the space we need to really sort out the things going internally. We may be kind of subtly engaged in a stress response all day, every day, kind of round the clock idea of like, and even if we are just kind of being, there could be, oh, I'm thinking about my to do list and all the things I have to get done and all that stuff, rather than just kind of being present. And the frame we're going to look at here is just why it's important to have this space time and time again. I reiterate, I may be a little biased towards meditation and things like that, but it just reveals so much when you just sit with the discomfort. And at the bottom of it, a lot of times I find that my motivations were off base, that half the stuff I was doing, I don't even know why I was actually doing it, or it didn't feel like it was as effective as it could be. We can get caught up under these ideas of busy work and kind of appearing I think we glorify being busy. I remember growing up with my dad, it was any conversation was always like, "Oh, I'm working a lot. I'm busy." That was kind of prefaced all the time. And so the downfall with that is we're just running these patterns all day, every day. It's all subconscious kind of autopilot stuff. To some degree, we do have to do that in many areas of life, especially a day job, things of that nature. But in the slowing down is when we get clear, is when we can get more targeted with our actions. We can get more conscious about what our motivations are and if they still serve us. We're taking a step back from the hustle culture, needing to be productive, efficient, and in that slowing down process, that clarity is what actually allows us to accelerate things, because a lot of our actions may just be because that's what I'm used to doing or that's what I've always done. Those things are very programmed into our system. When we have these autopilot functions running and we don't stop to question them, basically it kind of creates a scenario when I do slow down, there's the program still running. That's where the discomfort comes in of, oh, there's something else I should be doing. So I'm always somewhere else other than right here. That's one of the tricks of the mind is just kind of keep things moving all the time so I don't have to be with myself. And a lot of people do have that fear. I know specifically like college or high school, it's yeah, you always want to be with your friends. You always want to be doing stuff, right? Because if you're not, you're missing out somehow. And so there's all these ideas going there of if I have to be with myself, now insecurities can come up, negative thoughts, fears, anxieties, that kind of stuff. We're giving that the floor in that space. And that is like some of the most powerful work you can do is to allow these things to bubble up and then take a deeper look at them. And this work is really about questioning that and being like, okay, why am I thinking these things? What am I carrying from my past? Because that's where they're coming from. They're coming from our past, they're coming from inside of us. So it has to come from somewhere. This is where we get to question the program and we can get more dialed into purpose. We can get more dialed into feeling like our actions are more meaningful if we feel like they're aligned with some sort of bigger picture. That's kind of the frame we're looking at is we want to create some sort of practice to have this space to be free of distractions, be free of everything, and just allow ourselves to be. And yes, we're going to go deeper into that. Any thoughts on this so far?
No, I'm glad that you clarified a little on the going deeper, right? Because I I think it could be misinterpreted that if you sit alone with yourself and you start having those negative thoughts and that it'll perpetuate them, right? But it is about questioning them. So I'm glad you clarified that in terms of that. And I think even when you first sent the idea for today over to me, I was immediately reminded of and I have no idea who coined this, but you're a human being, not a human doing. And we just have such a
Yeah.
propensity to want to be doing all the time.
Mhm.
How do we come back to the place where we can be?
I think probably one of the biggest advocates for this that many people are probably familiar with is it's Naval Ravikant. So he's like a Silicon Valley guy, a real deep thinker, but people love his podcasts that he goes on because it's all this Eastern philosophy type stuff he integrates into it, which I always find fascinating. But yeah, extremely wealthy, well-established person, but he clears his schedule. He creates a lot of freedom in his life to just be with himself, to just let his mind wander. And he's able to be extremely creative from that place. And also that he's got a lot of wisdom that stems from that as well. These are important ideas in terms of if you're not happy with the way things are going, you're probably running on a lot of old patterns and this allowing yourself to be, which be is just means present. It's just like I'm here and I'm allowing things to come up within me and we do detach from judgment of that. It's oh, this is coming up, so we want to approach that with curiosity. It's there and it's not going anywhere if we don't listen. But if I just get back into action and I override it, I'm basically stuffing it back down. And all these things, anything that's built on a negative idea of ourselves or avoidance, running away from a problem, these things subtly build over time. Because we're not addressing it, it doesn't mean it went anywhere. It just means like I'm subtly feeding those energies subconsciously throughout my day. And this shows up in our reactivity. We call these triggers, we call these, it's like, oh, this happened and I felt this way. And then we have a pre-programmed response, how to deal with those things with that discomfort that comes in. And so this is like it's a function of the nervous system to keep us safe, right? It's telling us there's a wound there. It's telling us something painful. And we've left it in that place. We haven't healed it yet. And so we've got these negative ideas and judgments built around it. And so that stuff gets activated. And so every time one of these things comes up, it's more of an invitation, if anything. It's like, hey, we want to project it and we want to say this person did something to me, but I have these feelings inside that are getting activated. So that's my part of the equation. That's what I'm responsible for. And that stuff, that information is generally going to be from growing up. That's the things you didn't have power over, the letdowns, the not getting needs met, that kind of stuff, or not being seen and heard and respected. All those things come up as well, right? And so we get to confront those things and transform them into a healthier place when we adopt this ability to kind of create some silence in our life and just be with the feelings because they're just feelings and we tend to want to push them away, run away, or override them. But if we view it as an invitation and I can approach it with curiosity, with this work, we're always doing somatic techniques. And what that means is like we're just focusing on the discomfort and we're approaching it gently to discover what's there. We're just focusing and breathing and we're telling ourselves it's safe and it's okay. And this is to gain self-knowledge. Within there is this pain that's stored and I have all these patterns built around it so I don't have to feel it. Over time, that gets more and more detrimental. Like I start to shut down my life in specific ways because I don't want to feel the intensity of those things. And my thing is always like, well, it's there and it's going to keep coming up. And none of us live in a bubble. So, maybe we approach it and try and soften the energies behind it. But all we're trying to do is shave some layers off it. And we're trying to dial down the intensity. And the more you do that, that's how we establish resilience, actually is we move into the stress and we transform the stress so that we can have a healthier relationship. Okay. Like I don't need other people to be any other way than they are. I learn to regulate myself. And then I'm not having these triggers happen constantly. So I'm not like, because we get the trigger and then we blame the person and they did this to us or whatever. And so we're escaping that loop. Okay. We're just like, oh, I'm going to heal myself. And then that person can do whatever and it probably won't bother me.
So if we're thinking about working through that, and that's like the ideal scenario for everyone, is that
Mhm.
they're able to heal the triggers, and ultimately this is also a form of like ownership in your own life, right? If they didn't do it to you, if you did it to yourself,
Mhm.
essentially. But what would you, if we're starting out, right? We have somebody brand new who's like, this is super, super uncomfortable for them. And I know we've talked about this on past podcasts, but where do we get the first steps, or you know what I'm trying to get to?
It usually starts with you get like tired of your own bullshit in simplest terms of like, yeah, like I start to notice that the same problems keep showing up over and over again. And like that's why we all need truth tellers in our life too. Like if we don't have the awareness of that, we need people to bring that into our awareness. And generally that's built around defenses too. So we might get upset with somebody that's bringing something to our awareness, but we have to ask about the quality of that person. Do they want what's best for me? That kind of thing. And so yeah, it's this journey to we're creating self-awareness. Okay. So when I'm in survival mode, all I'm worried about is my problems. And I'm in this mode of like everything I've got to get done. And most of the things I feel like I have to get done are to protect me from some sort of pain. Okay. So I'm like stuck in this loop of I always just have to keep pushing forward no matter what. And my mind's always occupied. And so it's honestly it's burnout generally that we have to hit before we start to question things because we're running on these stress responses all the time where we're probably going to have sleep issues, anxiety issues, things like that. So I think it's just this your mood, like how you feel on a regular basis. If there's always problems showing up in your life and you feel like everything's happening to you, that's where we start to have these invitations of like, okay, well, there's got to be a different way, right? And so that's where the search usually starts of is there a different way to do things? And much of my messaging is like it's the opposite of like kind of the standard society stuff. Okay. It's like, yeah, we want to feel things, not numb things out, right? We want to we want to do the work to get clear on what we want rather than just fall into the things we're supposed to do. Okay. And so, when we just live by default, that's going to be a mixed bag. Okay. That's going to create a lot of scenarios where we're probably not happy on a regular basis in some areas. And we may have some good aspects there too. All this is largely dependent on your upbringing as well and what was modeled for you. And if you had parents that were loving, caring, and could emotionally regulate pretty well, you probably have better skills. You probably have better outcomes going on. But it's like if you didn't come from that, you may be built on the stress response and the pain, those things. And that's going to have an expiration date in terms of like, there's going to be a point where you're just like, yeah, I can't do this anymore in the same form. And, and so that's where we start to look and I think everybody has these subtle outlets. Working out is a big one that a lot of people do. Like just this ability to be with yourself, you kind of get into this internal zone, right? But it's like a meditation practice, a yoga, journaling, any sort of reflection, having conversations with people that will actually tell you the truth and they're just not trying to tell you what you want to hear. All these things are catalysts to it's this direction back inward where that's where we start to find our real answer. Okay. Because until that point, we're always searching externally. I need this thing in order to make me happy. If this would only be different, that would change everything for me. The problem is like once we do those things, generally we feel the same way, if not worse, because it's just, oh, I got there, but there's still this like void inside. Those are the things is like you may need to achieve. You may need to check a lot of the boxes to be like, well, this could be a midlife crisis type situation. But yeah, I don't think I can go on this way anymore. And then yeah, it's like that. Then our mind starts searching for different answers. Okay, and so it's those are usually the beginning stages. It's just like there's something that comes in that makes you start to question, and that's that invitation to go a little bit deeper. And in that deep being deeper, we may like start to confront and see some things that we don't really like. Okay. And with all this work, these are skill sets. We can develop anything, we can heal just about anything. Well, I would say we could heal anything over time. Okay. These aren't like quick fixes a lot. If you have a lot of trauma, that's going to be a long journey, right? But it's all relative. And it's just this desire to want to feel a little bit better, this desire to feel more in control of your life, this desire to feel like you're moving towards something that actually has some substance or is meaningful to you. I think those are the main markers that start to awaken. And then from there, we start the awareness practices where if what I'm doing isn't working, I need to do something different. When I start to ask those questions of like, what can I do different? That's generally going to be, it's like, what can I change about myself? That's that natural progression. And so that's where it's like, well, is there something I'm doing that's creating all these problems? Is there a way I'm relating to people, or do I have people in my life that are contributing to my suffering? Well, and that would mean that they're not telling me truths. They're validating whatever I feel and telling me things are okay all the time. I don't have a clear mirror around me to reflect things back to me, because a lot of times that just creates more disconnect and more distance from people if we're not in sync with those. So we need things to shake up in our life to generally start this journey. Nobody finds this journey without some sort of pain. And for me, it was like the journey started, it was pain, but then it was also like a strong driver motivation to be the best that I can be at whatever I was doing. And so that was like, okay, I need to fix myself constantly. That becomes like a hypercritical perfectionist mentality. That's the painful part of like always picking myself apart. And so but that's like it's this refinement of, okay, these are the things I don't like about me. I'm just taking full ownership of that and working through them, being like, okay, I'm going to transform this to a healthier place. And then we eventually get to this place of self compassion, right? Where it's just, yeah, I start to see the humanness of everything, right? Like we all came from somewhere, we all were dealt a certain hand. And that's going to have positives, that's going to have negatives. And if I'm stuck in the negative on a regular basis, that's going to be a stronger catalyst in terms of, yeah, I can't do this anymore. Because if we're in that stress and that contracted state on a regular basis, over time that just gets more and more miserable. Okay. And so it has to be this something, that spark that comes from within, that's I want to live different. There's got to be something different for me. And then we start doing these things where we ask questions at a deeper level.
Sure. So, a couple things you said I think are worth adding a little bit more to. One, we're talking about you got to get sick of your own shit. This could look like hitting rock bottom. Really, you mentioned it has to be like a really painful situation. Then there's also the inner critic, right? Or the desire to constantly be perfecting yourself and being better side of it, which we've talked about before. Both those things are painful. Is there any way to come to this without it being coming from somewhere bad?
I think that's the aspect of, I have a big vision for my life, for myself. I have big goals, big dreams. And so in that part of that drive, that motivation to become better along that journey, I'm generally going to have to look at things. But we can do that journey strictly ego based, but I would say that's going to be based from pain too. I mean, ego based meaning, yeah, just becoming self obsessed and you're all that matters and that kind of thing. But that's always going to stem from pain to begin with. So I think we can have this healthy desire to do better. And we may want to, it's this ability to adopt some sort of growth mindset. And I think it's people that just like challenges, right? They like to push their limits, they like to kind of see what they can do. I think that can be a more balanced approach where there's always going to be pain at the bottom of it somewhere, but that's maybe not the focus in those places where I'm going to refine myself because I want to improve and I want to see what my potential is. And so I think it's always a mixture. There's extreme versions of like, yeah, rock bottom, ton of pain. I want to get out of this. But then there's also, I want some more adventure. I want to take on challenges. I want to be a beginner again at something. I just want to develop myself on all these different levels. That's going to be more of a discomfort that we're going to go through because it's just like this realization that everything takes time to develop and we really got to work at it. And in that process, the problem solving is there's going to be pain in that, but it's that pain's going to be, once again, those barriers that we have within ourselves. And we're always in tune with those with discomfort. So feeling uncomfortable in the body, like that's always our signal, be like, okay, there's something within me that's not at peace here. And that could be like I'm learning something new and I'm struggling at it. That's uncomfortable because yeah, maybe I have unrealistic expectations. Maybe like I want this to go faster than it is. And so I'm frustrated. There's different variations and all these things exist on a spectrum. I would say by and large, most people need kind of the painful thing to make them question, like a deep pain, but it doesn't have to be that way, of course. And further along you get, it's kind of things transform into more purpose based. I want to do this hard work because it's gonna amplify my capacity to do things on a bigger level or to serve or to complete this mission. It's just kind of like that willingness to go through those things. Like you just know it's going to be difficult, but it's like really this positive association with challenges. Like that's kind of a healthy thing. And when we're blazing a trail, it's like I'm going into the unknown. I'm trying to create some things. That takes a lot of creative thinking. And so a lot of times that is I'm taking steps, I hit roadblocks, and now I need to reflect. I need to go be with myself. I might need to do some research. I might need to go a few different ways to try and unlock this next step for me. But a lot of times it's we're projecting our own limitation onto the situation. And that's an internal thing. We want to get in tune with that because you experience this on a weekly basis, right? Sometimes it's just like all these things are perspective shifts. So I'm focused on this thing in a way that's limiting me or it doesn't feel very good. If we can shift your perspective about it, now we have some steps to take to move forward. And so that's all this really is. It's like we need that slowdown to realign. And once we realign, that accelerates our path. So that's kind of the main idea is like when we take the step back, I can get to this place where I can see a bigger picture and then I can be more targeted with my action. So it's just like I'm reorienting myself and me being mentally, emotionally stuck on something is my cue that, okay, there's a block within me and I need to make a mental adjustment so that I can get back on track because my mind, based on my beliefs, it can't see around this specific thing. And so that's where it is helpful to have outside perspectives and different point of views is because like we all have blind spots. You can't see it all. When you have somebody that's willing to share those things, that can give us the perspective shift that can be a game changer, which it's just like, oh, like I can't believe I couldn't see that myself. I would say that having mirrors around you, having people communicate, like it's a step back of like being with the discomfort of like, I have a problem here. And in applying creativity might come from other people. We can either create it ourselves by disarming and moving through the feelings and coming to peace with it, then our mind automatically opens up. But that might come through some sort of message or teacher or whatever. That it doesn't really matter where it comes from, but we need the slowdown. We need this ability to analyze things and just be like, well, yeah, this isn't working. So I need a redirection here. And if I can't see it, maybe somebody else can.
Right. Right. So I do want to, we're talking about being, you've mentioned a couple times the idea, right, around slowing down to speed up. But I'm curious about your thoughts on slowing down to speed up is one thing. Slowing down is still moving forward. That doesn't necessarily mean you stop.
Mhm.
So I'm curious a little bit on your thoughts of that versus coming to a complete pause to work through something.
I think the complete pause, it's going to be a bigger situation that's tied up in a lot of different knots. It's going to be like, yeah, there needs to be a big change here. So the best thing we can do is actually just stop and just take a look at it and try and rework things one step at a time. The slowing down and moving forward piece, it's going to be more of I'm on this path of kind of making regular adjustments, right? Where every step I take brings new information. I, I take a step back to take that into account and I reconfigure things, realign them, and then I'm taking a new step forward. So it's kind of this rhythm you start to adopt, but that still interjects the pause, and that's the assessment piece. Sometimes, and we ride the waves, meaning when momentum is in a really strong positive direction and things are really clicking, we're in alignment. We don't really need much. Okay. You kind of usually don't mess with that. But if I'm in this process of, yeah, I'm trying to build momentum, it's going to be a lot of that. I'm going to take an action. I'm going to take that information into account. I'm going to realign things, and then I can move a little bit faster the next time. But then I'm going to hit another roadblock, and I take a step back and reassess. Right. So I think it's, if I'm in the extreme negative momentum, that's where I probably stop, because I just may need to like set everything down for a bit and just really take a deeper look where I'm not going to be doing much action, because any action I take from that place is built on a lot of bad patterns that aren't working to begin with. So it doesn't serve me to act from that place, because to be honest with you, you probably don't know what you're doing if you're in that state, right? You probably just have created a ton of problems, and your wiring or default is actually to create problems. So that's where we might need to take a big step back and be like, okay, we need to overhaul things. But other things, I might be in a process where I'm trying to build momentum in a positive direction. And so that's going to take continuous adjustments until I hit the point where everything starts to work together. And then now I'm kind of riding that way. And everything is going to have its point where we're going to ride that so long, and then something else will pop in that'll happen. And then it's just this idea that I need space to myself to continually adjust. And that's what can keep momentum going over time. If I'm taking things as far as they can go and then it stops and I'm not doing that work, that can be what kills something. And you see this with a lot of businesses, like people hit a certain level and then they can't get past it, or things start to go backwards. It's like everything's a momentum game. And so the the being with things is this constant evolution of it. It's this constant, I'm going to be present with something and I'm going to make adjustments moment to moment so that I can continue progress here.
Yep. Yeah. Makes sense. There was one other thing you mentioned in terms of your work, the work you and I do together, where you mentioned, oh, you experience this weekly, these perspective shifts. I'm curious also, the coaching relationship, if you see that as a way to just be versus this is the way I would have to do it. I'm going to have to go force myself to sit in a room for a half an hour, whatever it is, right? Like for me to get to that is like discipline versus you and I have these weekly sessions. It isn't as difficult for me. So I guess I'm trying to make the connection there that through a relationship like a coaching relationship, you can see similar, like learning to be present benefits.
So that's a big part of why I do what I do, is like I know most people aren't going to go sit hours on end. And so that's what I do myself. Okay. Is I do that work to have the wisdom, but it's like in our sessions, I create the space for the slowdown, right? You know, it's like we're going to talk about something and I'm going to ask you to experience how that's showing up in your body. We're creating that space, and you know, I'm helping to guide you through basically that, you being with the heavy feelings. Okay. And our goal is to transform it and to learn some new things by going through the feeling. I view them as ultimately what we're after is, you can do this alone or you can have support doing it, and that's going to speed it up. But it's this, I'm going to sit with discomfort and I'm going to explore it. And in that exploring it, I'm going to have new insights about that piece. And that's how I'm going to get the perspective shift. So you can either do that on your own. So when I personally go meditate or I focus on something, all I'm doing is focusing on the tension in my body, and I'm just sitting with it and breathing. And I'm just like asking questions to myself. And my guidelines are, I'm always, how can I let this go? How can I heal this? How can I move through this? What am I not seeing? Right. I'm trying to get to this observational place with whatever it is, where it's this detachment. And so I'm just focusing on the heaviness until it starts to show me what I'm holding there. And then, basically, as it unlocks, I just kind of see many different flashes of things that show me like how this is linked to this, and all the dots start to connect for me. It's like this unwinding that happens where, because our mind stores information, it like kind of puts things into categories and it links them together. So it's just, oh, this is linked to this. So you start to see how they're connected and that they're feeding off each other. And basically you break that bond. So now it's like, oh, I don't want to operate that way anymore or whatever it is. And so when you're bringing it to conscious thought, you're reassessing things and then you're shifting out of it. You're like, yeah, what would be a better way to do this? And the trick is like, as soon as we dissipate the tension in the body, the mind feels safe actually to let it go. A lot of times when you take something from a discomfort or a heaviness and you have the mental emotional shifts to where it softens to a neutral place, you gain the wisdom, but that it's also like you basically dismantle the belief really easy behind it because it's not supported anymore. Okay. It's just like, oh, I don't need to protect myself from that anymore. Like I'm good. Like I understand how I created the situation in my life. And so it's like that can happen individually or in a group format or in a coaching format, whatever it is. It's like what we're after is like these insights that allow you to unlock the limiting beliefs in your body. Okay. And so we only get that in some form of reflection. I have to be aware of the discomfort and I have to be questioning the discomfort. And that takes a slower pace because when we have there's the two sides of the nervous system that we talk about. It's the fight or flight or rest and digest. Okay. And so the fight or flight, when I'm in that mode, I am operating on patterns. Okay. I'm just, I have all these pre-programmed responses. Like I have reactions to everything. I'm just going about my business. I don't really have access to creative thought. Okay. I'm just stuck in this place of I'm just doing things that I trained myself to do. And that's great as long as like we're on track, as long as things are working, as long as I'm in alignment with things. Once again, we don't need to mess with that too much. But if that keeps creating the same problem over and over again, continuing on that path, that doesn't lead to anything better. It actually just gets worse because the energy continues to gather and it's out of sync. It's off base. That's probably going to be something that's built on pain. And so that's the stuff we take a look at, being like, okay, this is shutting me down, or this is making me reactive, or I'm angry or sad, or whatever it is. Well, we're only that way because we've made a judgment about situations from our past and we've linked it to this situation. So when we feel things, we get that knowledge, we get those insights, and yes, so that can either be guidance or that can either be, yeah, I'm going to explore myself and see what's at the bottom of these things. And it's just the mind's trying to reconcile stuff. It's trying to balance everything out. But if I'm in polarity, I'm experiencing both ends of things, the positive and the negative. Okay. And so when I neutralize it, that's when I complete the lesson. Okay. So when I take something from that negative state, I walk it up to a neutral state, and that's going to be me shifting how I see the situation. And it's going to be gaining an understanding of myself and what happened. And as I take that journey, then I'm going to extract all these positive things from it. And that's what collapses the feeling in our body is like, oh, I've completed this lesson. And so my brain's no longer working on it. It's like, oh, I've got it. So that's when we come to peace with something. It's a reconciling of a situation.
Okay, so if we could ground this in some real life examples that, help people really gain a full understanding of it in terms of it's more than a theory. I'm wondering what you would share. Do you have anything you can specifically think of?
I think a good one is leaders reacting to situations, and then that creates unintended consequences. Like rather than, okay, a situation comes up and let's say it activates all the survival things in somebody. Like they have this reaction to it. And if you're guiding other people, we're not like effectively guiding from that place. Okay. We can if we have a ton of experience and we can detach from it. But If a wound was hit in me and now I'm like giving bad information out, okay, that's kind of a real thing that happens quite a bit, I think, where people under stress, you start to see the worst versions of them. They may lash out, they may throw people under the bus, they may do all these things. That could be a version of it where that's where we want to, okay, these big feelings are here. That's not where I make decisions. That's not where I push things forward. I need to sort through those first to get some clarity because it activated a big pain within me. And if it's based on pain, it's going to create all these unintended consequences. Another one could be in like an athlete that's training too much. Let's say if their mindset is me being the best is I just have to train myself into the ground all the time. I just have to work really hard, but we're not respecting that other side of things, right? So I might keep pushing forward through things that might be detrimental. And that's going to be built on me needing to prove myself, which is going to be feeling not good enough, right? So I might be doing too much that could be detrimental to me, and then I could be making bad decisions based on that. We could see these ideas of like desperation come in of if somebody really wants something to happen, they're usually trying to force it too. And that's kind of those are unbalanced actions, meaning I might be pushing on things too much. I might be taking advantage of people. I might be making bad decisions, and everything has a consequence. And so we're not able to access this bigger picture thinking like when we're in a state of stress. We might be impulsive in making destructive decisions. And if we're reacting based on this feeling, that's kind of that loop of we want to create that awareness and be like, hey, I'm not in a place to be doing what I need to do right now. I need to buy some time to try and rework this so that I can show up in a better way. And because we don't want to be making decisions, we don't want to be taking steps that are going to create bigger consequences for us because it's built on pain. Looking back to my baseball career, a lot of it did start to come from desperation. I was trying to string all these things together and nothing was working. I just always felt like I was digging a bigger and bigger hole. That's the work is we want to ideally get to the place where I'm doing these things because one, I want to, and two, like I'm in alignment with it. And it's not coming from a feeling of lack or I need to do this to prove to somebody or yeah, it could be we have a lot of shame. There could be a lot of insecurities. And that's where like imposter syndrome comes in of like, I don't want to be found out. If I'm trying to put out an image to people, like that's another aspect we can look at. It's all these things. If we just sit with the insecurity, we can make peace with it. We can learn about it and we can actually transform those weaknesses into a strength, or we can at least neutralize it. Okay. But if we're not sitting with those things, or if we're not being coached through them, that creates these dynamics where I'm doing all these things that are generally affecting other people around me in a negative way, but I'm not aware of it. That's where we become that kind of self-absorbed, like I'm the only one that matters. It doesn't matter what I'm doing to anybody else as long as I get what I want. You see a lot of that. But it's always built on pain. It's always built on this not good enough feeling. What if we just handle that first? What if we explore that and come to that place of like, we heal that part of us where I don't feel like I need to do those things now because the pain is just getting transferred externally, but the pain's still there too for me. So it's just like, well, why don't I handle the pain? And then I create better relationships in my life. I actually make decisions that benefit other people rather than hurt other people. It's kind of this switch that happens when we address what's going on inside.
When we talk through these things and it all feels super, yeah, makes sense. It's logical. Got it. Got it. But human beings generally are resistant to that, right? If that's not necessarily the first thing they think of is, oh, I've got this painful thing and I should handle that first. That's not instinctual, I would
Right.
say, for a lot of people. So if the first instinct is to push it away, how would someone develop like the awareness to even sit with it, to even be with it?
It kind of goes back to earlier where it's just you're going to be hitting roadblocks. You know, you're not going to be happy with what's going on. People are going to start falling out of your life because they don't want to deal with you anymore, right? Like that it's going to be like that type of stuff. That's if all you're carrying with you is your pain and your reactions, that is going to eventually be pretty isolating. People aren't going to respond very well to you. It is going to be a reality check over time. Generally, people that are close to that type of situation, let's say it's a family member or a loved one or a good friend, but usually there's some patience to it, but everything kind of runs its course where if you're not working on these things on some level, and I'm not saying it has to be a deep dive, that's all dependent on what you want. You may just be, it's all these things are dependent on your standard. Do I want to be completely free to pursue all the things I want to do, or do I just want to live this kind of quiet, normal life? So these are all like bigger questions for anybody. But if I have some sort of value system too, that's going to be like, well, yeah, I don't want to treat other people poorly. And if I have pain going on, there's odds that's going to be showing up some way in how I interact with others. So I think there's just so many different things that can pop in that can create that awareness, but it's generally you hit a roadblock that you can't move forward unless you take a look at something. Otherwise, you start losing things in your life. I think that's the powerful moment for most people. And ideally, with all these things, it's we associate this is how I grow, this is how I learn, this is how I get better. But there's the harder versions of it. And most people honestly need the harder versions because they're too comfortable. They haven't adopted any sort of rhythm to, yeah, I want to get better at these things. It's usually they settle and get comfortable and then they don't want to move off of that. It's one of the things I really appreciate about athletes is like athletes, you like willingly go suffer. It's like part of the process. I think most people need some version of that in their life because if not, it is just like, oh, I just want to be comfortable and that's it. And then you start to tell everybody around you that, hey, you need to act however I need you to act so that I feel okay. And that's just like that's nonsense. It's like, well, these are your feelings. You're the one that's not moving. Why should everybody else stop? It's all these bigger questions of, well, it's going to happen when your life starts to show you like, hey, like you need to change. Otherwise things are going to start shifting in your life dramatically. And that is when people hit rock bottom is like they're sliding and then they just keep sliding. They don't take the step back. They don't reassess. They're very committed to their problems. They're very committed to their misery. And we all have those choices. The truth is anything can be shifted, anything can be changed. But it does take that personal responsibility piece. It's getting to that place of being real with yourself on some level. And it's easier when you have something you look forward to or some sort of goal. If your only goal is to just exist and get by, there's not really a push in any direction. It's just like, well, yeah, I just want to be comfortable. Then, yeah, we may never take a look at this stuff.
So, if you were to summarize our conversation today a little bit, maybe your key takeaways, key tips, what would they be?
With this idea of permission to be, we've also integrated permission to feel, permission to sit with things without trying to fix them. It's permission to evolve from that place. All these different things kind of they keep recentering on this internal process that is how you grow and evolve is you have to be making different decisions. You have to be taking a look at things if you want things to improve, get better, or you want them to change. And there's this tendency to just spring into action all the time. But our actions are only productive if they're aligned. If our actions are built on pain, if they're out of alignment with who we really are, we're going to just create more and more problems over time. And that can stack up pretty heavy and we could actually dig a pretty big hole from that place. It's about adopting just the space to just get to know yourself on a little bit deeper level. And I think that's a useful practice no matter what. There's so many distractions, there's so many things that pull us off track. If we are in survival, definitely, yeah, trying to make ends meet and in all these struggles, it's like, well, to get out of those, we always need new thought happening. We need some version of like, I've been maybe just scraping by my whole life. I need to do something differently to break out of this. And these things can be very heavy to work through. There's no doubt about it. It's not minimizing any of that. But the changes only happen through reflection. The changes only happen through questioning. The changes only happen through shifting our relationship with something. We're always trying to upgrade how we think about things so that it's in a more neutral state, at least. If we're rooted in negativity, if we're in this place where we can't see our way out, we have to get a little resourceful. We have to try and work the puzzle. You have to wrestle with things. You have to be like, okay, like And it might not be an easy road. It might not, all these things are very difficult. And if you have support, great. If you don't have support, it's just like, well, hey, can I find mentors? Can I listen to podcasts? Can I watch videos? Can I read books? What can I do that gets my mind operating a little bit differently? Because if I'm stuck in that place and just committed to my misery, there's no path forward. Ultimately, these things come down to a willingness. I think like a wonderful goal for people is to, when we're talking about permission to be, is to build this healthy relationship with yourself so you don't have to run from yourself. Okay. So that you can be with yourself and you feel good. And well, yeah, we all have negative thoughts that bubble up, and it's putting all these things into perspective of like where they came from and how they develop, and that they're actually just judgments from your past, and you can unhook from them. You can shift out of them. It takes a little bit of work, takes conscious effort, but if you're not giving yourself that time to slow down, that stuff really never changes.
All right. This was good. We might have to pull this topic again. I think there's a lot here. So I know you've got a lot going on. If people are looking to connect with you, jump in on one of your upcoming programs or work with you coaching, how would you want them to connect with you?
Yeah, so if you'd like to go deeper with me, you can visit my website, brandonthielk.com. On there, you can schedule a free strategy session. And so that's a half hour, and we can just kind of talk through what you've got going on and where you want to head in your life and how I can help. I also offer a group program called the Lightning Lab, and that's a 3-month membership. We're approaching our 3rd month, so I'll be kind of jump starting that again. And with the Lightning Lab, you get 2 teaching sessions per month, a Q&A session, weekly exercises, and a community chat feature to engage with others. Also, you can follow me at Brandon Thielk on Instagram, and I post there pretty regularly. And then also on YouTube, we're always putting stuff out. So thanks for joining us. This was a great topic. I might have hit a little bit deeper again, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll keep expanding on these ideas and yeah, help guide you through it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Talk to you later, Brandon.
All right, see you.